Imagine you're sitting on a bathroom floor, cold tiles pressing through your clothes. Your 1-year-old son asleep in your lap, his tiny chest rising and falling, completely unaware of where he is. You've locked the door because a public bathroom inside a train station, is the only shelter you have for the night. No money, no job, no plan. Just you, your boy, and the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Now imagine that 5 years later, you're running your own multi-million-dollar brokerage firm on Wall Street. Suits, skylines, and your name on the door. That is not a movie. That is the actual life of Chris Gardner. And what I'm about to tell you, the parts Hollywood left on the cutting room floor, will change the way you think about failure, about rock bottom, and about what it truly costs to build something from nothing. Chris Gardner grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in a world designed to keep him small. His mother was in prison when he was still a child. His stepfather was violent. He was passed between foster homes like something nobody wanted. By the time he was old enough to understand the situation, he had already learned the thing poverty teaches everyone who grows up inside it, that the rules of the game were written by someone else, for someone else, and you were never supposed to win. He joined the Navy, got out, moved to San Francisco with nothing but determination, and found work as a medical equipment salesman. Barely surviving, but surviving. He had a son with a woman named Jackie. And then, in the way that hard lives tend to accelerate, everything collapsed at once. Jackie left. The apartment went. And Chris found himself alone on the streets of one of the most expensive cities in the world, with a toddler in his arms and nowhere to go. He slept in shelters when there was space. He slept in bathrooms when there wasn't. Every morning he made sure Christopher Jr.'s clothes were clean and his belly was full and his face saw his father smiling. His son did not know they were homeless. That was not an accident. That was a decision Chris made deliberately, every single day, choosing to protect the boy's world even while his own was disintegrating around him. And here is where the story stops being sad and starts being something else entirely. Most people in that position take the first stable thing offered to them, a warehouse job, a service gig, anything with a paycheck, and a floor to sleep on. Chris Gardner looked at his situation and did something that looked, from the outside, like madness. He applied for an unpaid internship at Dean Witter Reynolds, a stockbroker training program with no salary, no safety net, and no guarantee of a job at the end. Just a chance, if he outcompeted 19 other candidates, to one day earn a commission. He was living in a bathroom. He applied anyway. Every morning he dropped Christopher at daycare, rode the bus in his one good shirt, and walked into that office determined to outwork every single person in the building. While other trainees took lunch, Chris stayed on the phone. While they left at 5, Chris was still dialing. He had one rule: make more calls than anyone else. Every day. No exceptions. No excuses. Because he understood something those other candidates didn't have to understand yet, that he had zero margin for a wasted minute. Think about what that actually means. He was outperforming people who had warm apartments, full refrigerators, and no child depending entirely on them. The odds weren't just stacked against him. They were vertical, and he climbed them anyway. He got the job, not out of sympathy, not because someone bent the rules for a good story. He got it because when they looked at the numbers, he was the best candidate in the room. By 1987, Chris Gardner had founded his own firm, Gardner Rich & Company, with offices eventually stretching from Chicago to New York to San Francisco. The man from the bathroom floor was managing funds for some of the most powerful institutions in the country. But here's what I need you to hear, because this is the part that actually matters. When journalists asked Chris what kept him moving during those nights with no roof and no hope, he didn't talk about ambition. He didn't mention vision boards or morning routines or the grind. He said something quiet and devastating. He said, I made a decision that my son was not going to grow up the way I did. That was it. That was a whole engine, not a desire for wealth, not a hunger for status. A wall he was building between his child and the world that had broken him. And every phone call, every cold tile night, every early morning was another brick in that wall. What Chris Gardner understood, and what most of us only learn when everything falls apart, is that the right kind of purpose doesn't inspire you. It leaves you no choice. You don't wake up motivated when purpose is that deep. You wake up and you move, because not moving is not an option you're willing to consider. There's a line he said in interviews that I keep coming back to. He said, "The cavalry ain't coming. No one is riding in. Not a mentor. Not a lucky break. Not the universe finally deciding you've suffered enough. At some point, the only move available to you is to become the thing you've been waiting for. The next time conditions don't feel right. The next time you're waiting for one more thing to fall into place before you start. Remember a man in a train station bathroom, his son asleep across his legs, already planning tomorrow's calls. Conditions were never right for Chris Gardner. He moved anyway. And that is the whole lesson.